the same. Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is a meeting of the Boulder County Commissioners and just about half of our staff. And this is our first effort to do more public presentations about the policies that Boulder County has adopted that inform the decisions that we make on spending, on positions that we take at DRCOG with our Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, the spending decisions that we're making with our new extended transportation tax. And so Commissioner Stolzman, who's joining us on the screen, and Commissioner Lochemin and myself decided that it would really be helpful for the public to just be better informed about what we're hearing as county commissioners from our expert staff, so that we're all on the same page as we move forward on transportation funding and various projects. And we're kicking it off this morning with a discussion of our Vision Zero policies and the improvements and the programs and services that we are putting in place so that we can reduce the incidence of tragic fatalities and serious accidents on our roads. I think if you follow the news at all, you're aware that that vehicle crashes, bicycle accidents, pedestrian injuries, they're all up tragically. And so the urgency of this Vision Zero policy is very important. And so what we're going to do is have a presentation from our staff on what they're working on with Vision Zero. And each person is going to introduce themselves as they speak rather than take time this morning for that. And then the commissioners may have some dialogue with staff about what we've heard. And then we'll close this out, and it'll be recorded and available for the public to watch if they're interested in going back and learning more. And I think I hope I can say safely that the materials that we'll be looking at here this morning are on our website. And if that wasn't the plan, we'll figure out how to make it the plan. So this is a new thing. And I'm really excited about it, and I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Kathleen. Great, thanks.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Levy. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be part of this first meeting with this public-facing update for the community. I'm Kathleen Brackey. I'm the Deputy Director for Boulder County's Community Planning and Permitting Department and lead our transportation planning team. But I'm here today as part of a much broader team across the Boulder County organization, all of the work that we're doing around transportation safety, and in order to achieve our ambitious Vision Zero safety goal to reduce and ultimately eliminate all serious injury and fatal crashes, takes all of us working together. So it's all of the folks you'll hear from today. There's many more that are working on this that are online and behind the scenes as well. So it truly is a team effort across the organization, and also with our agency partners at all levels around local, regional, state, and federal partners to bring this forward. So it's exciting work, it's critical work, and it's foundational work. Everything we do is really centered on safety and making sure that people choosing any mode of transportation, driving, walking, biking, accessing transit, whatever it may be, they get where they want to go safely and they get home safely. So that is the foundation of our work and our policy. And we've got a great presentation for you this morning. Again, we'll highlight the work that's going on across the organization. And it is, I guess, as I put it, a steep hill to climb. This is a lot of work. Our local and state and national data, you'll hear, is trending in the wrong direction. And so we really need to double down our efforts on making sure that we can create a more safe system for people of all ages and abilities, all modes of transportation, and all stages of life. We do have this brief presentation. We will make sure that it's available on our website so that people can see it afterwards, and certainly want to continue the ongoing dialogue with all of us together, as well as with the community. Because while it also takes our organizations, it takes each and all of us individually as well to get there. So we all use our transportation system in different ways. So how can we all work together individually and together to improve our safety. So we have a great lineup this morning. So I'm going to start off and hand it off to Alex Wright, who's with our transportation planning team, to be our first presenter.
Good morning, commissioners. So I'm going to discuss how we got to our current Vision Zero policy, take a couple steps back to our 2020 Transportation Master Plan update. And so this policy is really informed by what we heard from the public. As part of the outreach for that plan, this graph shows the number of comments that came in different categories. So you can see bicycle facilities was the most frequently commented on topic, followed by safety, signalized intersections, pedestrian facilities, and speed. So as part of our TMP, we had 6 qualitative goals, of which safety is one, and developed a performance metric for safety to track. So for a little bit of background on what is Vision Zero, it's a shift in philosophy that states that no loss of life is acceptable. Sorry. So Vision Zero states that traffic deaths are preventable. We should anticipate human failing in our approach to traffic safety and focus on fatal and severe crashes with a safe systems approach. Next slide. So with that foundation from our public input and from the Vision Zero network, Vision Zero goal that was adopted by the commissioners back in 2020 was to eliminate serious injury and fatal traffic crashes in unincorporated Boulder County by 2035. So a couple of examples of how we're integrating equity into this work include our Vision Zero Safe Routes to School Action Plan that we've applied for grant funding for, which will establish an equity-based prioritized list for traffic safety improvements at schools, and then our Safer Streets and Roads grant that was recently funded by the USDOT to complete our Vision Zero Action Plan. Both of those will include an equity assessment and a focus on vulnerable road users. In terms of how we're going to pay for that and how we're prioritizing our investments, this really goes back to our 2022 transportation sales tax that was recently extended by the voters. So while none of this is legible, the arrows show all the different projects that touch directly on traffic safety. So we want to show how integrated Vision Zero is with our prioritized investments from this sales tax. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Paul Frank in our community planning and permitting department.
All right. And Paul, just before you start talking, this is Ashley. We have a number of chats that folks are having a hard time hearing. So if folks in the room could speak up, that would be great.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about evaluation. So we get all of our crash data from CDOT, both for CDOT highways and county local highways. And then Public Works and CP&P clean up the data prior to being able to use it for analysis. And then what we do is kind of a comprehensive crash analysis using that data. We do that every 3 years using the previous 10 years worth of data. The chart on the screen shows traffic crash fatalities in Boulder County between 2006 and 2022. As you can see, we had a dip in 2020 related to the pandemic, and then the last 2 years have really jumped up. And this is kind of matches both statewide and national trends. We've seen a rise in fatalities. And again, this is both unincorporated and municipalities, so it's the entire county. So this is an example of map from our traffic crash analysis, just kind of a heat map showing all of our injury and fatal crashes in unincorporated Boulder County and our mountain towns. And so, you know, we kind of use a data-driven approach that informs and kind of confirms our work. Another part that we have is our crash analysis team. And this is a group that gets together every other month and reviews fatal and serious injury crashes that have occurred in unincorporated Boulder County. And it's made up of folks from CP&P, Public Works, the Sheriff's Office, the DA's office, as well as Colorado State Patrol and CDOT. And we get together and see if there's anything that, you know, identify mitigations or possible quick fixes that we can do to prevent a fatal crash from happening in that location. So just a quick comparison to where Boulder County is. This is a a chart showing 2020 to 2022 fatal crashes per 100,000 population. And as you can see, Boulder County is slightly better than average, but we definitely still have a lot of work to do as we work towards 0 deaths. So our traffic crash analysis identified kind of 4 major crash trends. The first one is centerline crossing crashes, and it's particularly on US 287. Another one is bicycle crashes, especially like hit from behind and getting hit by a turning motor vehicle in an intersection. The third is broadside and approach turn crashes at intersections, and the fourth is single vehicle crashes, especially impairment related and involving a motorcycle. So what are some things we are doing to try to address these major areas? Well, for centerline crossing crashes on US 287, we have a safety study that we started that's kind of looking at the whole corridor, both unincorporated areas and in the municipalities, to see what improvements can be made for safety. Also, just last week, we submitted an HSIP grant application with CDOT to construct a concrete barrier in the median to try to prevent some of these fatal head-on crashes that are occurring. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Christine from Public Works.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Christine Obendorf, Engineering Division Manager for Public Works. I'm going to highlight some projects and the facility type of improvements we've made and are planning to make. So the implementation of these projects. So by looking at bicyclists hit from behind, there's 2 approaches that we've looked at. The first one is looking at the space within the roadway itself. Most recently, we completed half of 71st Street, and we're going to construct another half this year. And 120th Street south of Lafayette is forthcoming, and Lafayette is working on South Boulder Road. With these facilities, we're looking at adding paved shoulders, buffered shoulders, and bike lanes. In addition, the Transportation Planning Group has worked a lot with CDOT historically and in the future, one being the US 36 bike lane, which is a separated facility, as well as the 119 bikeway from Boulder up to Longmont, and then looking at a separated facility along the Foothills Highway. And then, this unfortunately is a common occurrence where we have bicyclists hit by turning vehicles. And some of the things that we do at these intersections are adding things like skip striping or green pavement markings, and that could either be at intersections or even in the case of like DRCOG, where we're adding striping adjacent to the road itself. And the other intersection where we've added buffered bike lanes and striping is US 287 in Isabel. And forthcoming, we're starting the design of 61st in Belmont Road. And again, looking at separate facilities, the Foothills Bikeway from Boulder to Lyons. Many of us, have unfortunately seen several accidents that occur at intersections, but what we might not know is the terminology that like Josh Trickey, our traffic engineer, or Josh or Paul look for when they're looking in the crash reports from the State Patrol. And that would be your approach turn, which is your left turning vehicle, and then your T-bone or your broadside crash. So some of the things that we have done to help with those, and this one I'm particularly proud of, is the 287 and Isabel Road project. CDOT did a study in 2016 looking at 580 intersections within their region. This intersection was the 4th highest need to get improved, and we improved it by adding left turn lanes, buffered bike lanes, buffered bike shoulders, and looking at all the traffic movements there to help reduce those crashes. Later this year, we hope to construct the 95th Street and Lookout Road intersection, and that is grant funded with it's a PSIP project. Please don't ask me to tell you what that acronym means. And then there is Highway Safety Improvement Program. Thanks, Kathleen. And then again, looking at intersections and bikeway facilities along 119. So that, I'll hand it back over to Paul to continue forward.
Sure. So one of the things we do as far as single vehicle crashes is we are adding 6-inch edgeline striping on our county roads to help kind of better delineate where the edge of the road is. That's something that CDOT has also been working on, switching over on their highways as well. I'm also going to talk briefly about education. Education is probably an important component of the Vision Zero. One of the things that we do is our Vision Zero community partnership meetings. These are held approximately once a quarter, and we bring together county staff, staff from all the municipalities within the county, CDOT, transportation advocates, folks from school districts, and we all get together and kind of share ideas and collaborate on things that we can do to work towards our shared goal of Vision Zero, reducing fatal and severe injury crashes. Another important part is our youth transportation program that Candy Edson runs. And some of the programs she has is the Trip Tracker, the bicycle-friendly driver training, and then a safe routes to school lending library that we just started up as well, among many other things that her program does. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Jim Chamberlain, Division Chief with Boulder County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Jim Chamberlain with the Sheriff's Office. For enforcement, we have two forms of enforcement for responding to accidents. Primary response for investigating accidents on the county is the Colorado State Patrol. They're responsible for the investigation of all accidents on the county roads. The Sheriff's Office is responsible for investigating accidents that occur in our contract towns. Even though Colorado State Patrol is responsible for responding to the accidents, it's under the Sheriff's Office first. We have more vehicles available to respond to them, and we assist the State Patrol providing them assistance in their investigation, whether it's traffic control or just stabilizing the incident. As our department starts to stabilize in staffing, we're starting to put more of an emphasis on traffic enforcement for deputies in the county, with a priority on some of the major roads, like 36. 119, 287 for the more fatal and more serious accidents that are occurring. We've also partnered with the state. We just received information. We obtained a grant for Click It or Ticket, which is going to put more deputies out on the street looking for traffic violations with an emphasis on seatbelt safety and making sure people wear their seatbelts. We're also applying for a LEAF grant, the Law Enforcement Assistance Fund, to assist in identifying officers that can be out there at night looking for impaired or drunk drivers. So we are stepping up on that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark Rosen. Christian, take it over.
I'll take over. Thanks, Chief. Good morning, everybody. I'm Christian Gardner-Wood. I'm one of the Chief Deputy DAs at the DA's office under Michael Doherty in our Community Protection Division. Wanted to spend just a little bit of time talking about our traffic safety program within the DA's office and some of the things that we're working on. But before I talk about that program, I wanted to piggyback on some of the stats that Paul talked about earlier in terms of our prosecution. So on the next slide, you'll see some of our prosecutions over the last 3 years. If you look at on the left side, the data there are our careless resulting in death and our vehicular homicides and vehicular assaults, our very serious traffic crashes. And we saw a substantial spike in all three of those between 2021 and 2022, when you look at our vehicular assaults, careless with death, and vehicular homicide. That's been a concerning trend, just as the CDOT numbers were showing that we have seen in our prosecutions, but really just a massive spike last year that really caught our attention. If you look at the right side on that data, we're looking at our careless driving resulting in injury. That's bodily injury as opposed to the serious bodily injury that we're looking on the left side. And certainly not to diminish it, but just to explain the differences between those two. And then we have our careless driving stats. out of those 5 different stats, careless driving does not necessarily mean that there is a crash. So I do want to preface it with that. The other 4, there will be a crash associated with those prosecutions that we're dealing with that either result in death or in injury. The careless driving, those numbers will include both crash matters as well as non-crash careless drivings. But we've seen that trend, just as the state numbers have, of the increase over the last several years, but a market increase just last year when we look at our more serious cases with death or vehicular assault. So thinking about that, if we go to the next slide, we've looked over the last year at increasing our traffic safety program, recognizing that when we think about the numbers on the prior slide, it's too late when we're dealing with that. Those are serious prosecutions that need to be treated very seriously, and that's how we do it as at the DA's office. But recognizing that when we're talking about speeding, when we're talking about distracted driving, and those cases that we're getting from the sheriff's office and from the state patrol, we need to deal with those from an education standpoint, so we're not getting to those fatal crashes and we're not getting to the injury crashes. So we have worked to look at how we can do more education with folks that are coming into our office. We had staff members that audited all of the classes that we send folks to, and looking at making sure that those were appropriate, working with community partners to make sure that they feel that those are providing the necessary information. And we've added some classes. We took away some that we did not feel were as appropriate to refer folks to. And we also looked at recognizing concerns around equity around that in terms of the cost for those classes. We're working and getting funding to be able to provide money to drivers that say they may not be able to afford those classes, to make sure that they're getting that education that they need in order to understand the concerns around speeding or distracted driving that is ultimately leading to those increase in numbers that we saw in the data slides. We've also been working with our diversion and restorative justice unit to also engage those individuals from an educational restorative practice standpoint, so that they understand, with the increase we've seen statewide and particularly in Boulder around those serious crashes, of what the next step is with those speeding or distracted driving cases, so they can understand the harm and the impact that they may just see it as, oh, I was going 15 miles over, it's not a big deal. But when we have those conversations, they understand the concerns and the impact that this is having in our community, as we're recognizing those conversations we're having with our community partners, Bicycle Colorado, some of the local advocacy groups, Mothers Against Drug Driving, that are explaining those harms and the community safety risks. So really a focus on those lower level violations to hopefully provide that education and restorative conversation, so we're not getting to those continued substantial numbers on the fatalities and serious traffic collisions. And I'm going to hand it over to Mark Rusin with the Commissioner's Office.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mark Rusin, Senior Policy Analyst here in the Commissioner's Office. On the screen, you will see the traffic safety policy that the commissioners included in Boulder County's 2023 state legislative agenda. The primary legislative effort that we see that's currently in place to make progress on this policy goal is listed there at the bottom of the slide. The Automated Vehicle Identification Systems Bill. Boulder County is coordinating with the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition to track and engage with this pending bill that's coming from primarily Bicycle Colorado. We've been working to inform the effort to draft the bill, and our current understanding of the legislation is that it is intended to make it easier for local jurisdictions to implement photo radar speed enforcement. Because speeding is often a contributing factor in severe crashes, having more tools in the toolbox like photo radar speed enforcement to address speeding is important. As I mentioned, staff is coordinating and engaging with the NWMCC, the City of Boulder, and other key stakeholders to provide input on the draft bill, which we are expecting to be sponsored by Senator Faith Winter from Westminster. If introduced, as I mentioned, we see the bill as a primary way to support the state legislative agenda policy you see on the screen, and we plan to actively engage in the advocacy effort to support the bill. We'll be sure to keep you apprised of the effort. The bill has not yet been introduced, but once it is, we'll be in touch with the commissioners around engaging with the advocacy effort, and as well as with Kathleen and her team. That's all I have, and I believe Kathleen is going to take it from here.
Great, well, thank you so much, and hopefully this gives a flavor of all of the work that is being done across the organization to support our Vision Zero transportation safety initiatives, both to look at this from a data-driven approach, as well as to look at this from a preventative approach, and how do we use that information and all of these opportunities through the engineering and the education and the enforcement together, so that we can create a safer transportation system for people traveling throughout Boulder County and connecting on beyond. It really is that holistic approach of how do we pull it all together. And we work not only within our county organizations, but as I mentioned, with our agency partners. So the Denver Regional Council of Governments has a very robust program on Vision Zero and traffic safety. We've provided some information on the website here and some links for a great video that was done by DRCOG, really that emphasizes why the number is zero. We talk about this a lot and what an ambitious goal it is, and is it realistic? And we've been working on traffic safety for decades, and we can't get there. But why now, and why is zero the right number, and why that's the only number that we really can focus on? Because when we look at these, yes, we talk about the data, but all of these numbers are people, and there are people who were hurt or people who didn't get home that night. And so we want to make sure that we're working in concert and hand in hand with our countywide colleagues, and then also with DRCOG, also Colorado Department of Transportation. We lean on them a lot. They have great information and educational videos to share, so we can provide links and resources for that as well. Again, none of us can do this together. It takes all of us working hand in hand to make these this transformational change happen and to actually achieve Vision Zero. So it's important work, like I said, it's critical work. And again, at the end of the day, it takes all of us as individuals as well. So on the DRCOG website, there's also a link to take a personal pledge that as you're out on the transportation system, to really be thinking about, am I paying attention? Am I speeding? Am I on my phone? Am I trying to multitask here? And really to make that pledge to be a safe, contribute to the safety of the system. So again, just some examples of resources that are very important and out there for all of us to use and to work together on. This slide provides information on Boulder County's Vision Zero website. Again, we'll post this presentation from today and a link to the presentation and the dialogue we have coming up, so that people can see it. And we really appreciate the public interest and public support for all of these safety initiatives. They're not easy. And as we go forward and as we're working on these projects together that Christine mentioned and others, there's going to be critical trade-offs and hard conversations. We're used to, in the transportation system and transportation planning, prioritizing convenience or speeding or things like that, being able to get somewhere quickly. Well, now we need to think about, it's not just that, it's really thinking about how do we get there safely? And we may have to make different decisions and trade-offs in terms of what we're prioritizing and how we're prioritizing our investment. So we appreciate the support and the engagement as we go forward with all of this important work. So with that, I think our next slide is a set of questions that we thought could help tee off the discussion this morning with all of you. Again, just to help get us started, but thinking around, our current transportation plan, Vision Zero safety goal and performance metric, just getting your feedback on that. And then any additional information that you would like to see and any suggestions that you would have for us as we do our work together. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks everyone for coming, joining us, providing us this background and information for a discussion that I think the commissioners ought to have now on what we've heard. And we can use those questions for prompts, or I know I wrote down a couple of questions I would like to ask. So I think we can use that. We can just put the questions we have on the table. It can be discussion, and I'm going to yield the floor here, Marta.
Sure.
And let's not go with titles because we're just having a meeting here. So Marta, anything top of mind for you?
Sure, thanks. Thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Appreciate the information. And this is, for me, this is really important. This is something we've been talking about as a board for the last couple of years, and our newest commissioner was ready to join us as well. In that we have a lot of these types of presentations that come to us. And so what piece of this work can we just share with the public? Because it really is informational. It's exciting work, and there's some opportunities. So I do have a couple questions actually for all of you who presented while you were speaking. And some of that is because I think there's some other opportunities for involvement that it wasn't clear to me. And so I just want to make sure that folks who are listening in or watching the video later have that same information. It might be some other additional links that we could provide. So one, and I believe it was Alex in your conversation, I just wondered if you were talking about equity work and vulnerable road users is the term I heard. And I'm just wondering if you could, what does that mean? Who are you considering in this work as a vulnerable road user?
Generally, vulnerable road users is a term that applies to bicyclists, pedestrians, and then motorcyclists, so people that aren't closed in a car, because they're more vulnerable to injury.
Okay, thank you. And it might have been the same one, showed a little bit about a heat map. Is that heat map just something you put in the presentation? Is it actually a heat map where it's on the website that people could look at and see some of that same data that was showing injuries and fatal crashes?
Yeah, so that's from our most recent traffic crash analysis, which is on our Vision Zero website.
Okay.
Just linked the slide before this. So
okay,
yes,
perfect.
That map and a bunch of other maps showing different crash patterns and on there.
Okay, great.
The particular heat map that was shown shows all injury and fatal crashes incorporated Boulder County for the last decade.
Okay, thank you. And my hope, I think, for that is there's some in that education realm, both for educators and also students who are doing research, et cetera. If we have some of this information that people can access, I think that would be really great to make it localized.
Can I jump on that?
Of course.
Just real quickly on the heat map. I think, Alex, is that the map where you can actually click on the hood over the side of the crash and it'll tell you a little bit about it, like what was involved?
Not that map. That was a static one, but we do have an interactive map on the Vision Zero, on the county's Vision Zero website.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. I think this was part of Christine's presentation that was talking about the 287 in Isabel and the research that CDOT had done with 500 plus areas, and that Isabel was actually number 4 on the list. Could you share where on the list the 95th and Lookout, and also I think 95th and Lookout was the only one because Highway 119
right. So CDOT only looked at their intersections. So 95th and Lookout is only, it's an unincorporated Boulder County intersection only. So they did not study intersections that were not their own. So that would not have been in the study.
Okay, so the prioritization wasn't around the high level of crashes necessarily, it was some other prioritization.
No, it was around crashes. It's just that they did not put, so they only looked at the intersections that they manage and control.
Okay.
So that intersection itself, you know, we have our data showing the crash data there and why it's a prioritization. However, when it was that 2016 CDOT study, the 580 that they were looking at are ones that they own, manage, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, those are on the, they look at the ones on the state highway system. So like US 287 is on the state system, whereas others are on our county system.
Okay.
So, thank you. Underneath them, look out, the focus on that intersection came about because that was one of the, if not the highest county road intersections from our traffic crash analysis.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, that's really helpful just to understand how those got chosen. Let's see here. There was a few, and I apologize, I don't know who was speaking about on education about Vision Zero partnership meetings, bringing together county staff, communities, transportation, etc. How do folks get involved in that? Do you have to be a specific like government partner? I heard
that would be more in Alex's realm of, and Cami. I think Cami's online as well.
We've had a variety of partners. We haven't included the general public yet. We've had folks representing different advocacy organizations, so Bicycle Colorado, Community Cycle, Cycles for Community, PMA, and others. So we generally extend the invitation to folks representing advocacy organizations. And then we've had a few members from the different transportation advisory boards, some of our municipalities, and staff from a variety of agencies.
Okay. Okay. So public's not welcome to that particular conversation yet.
We haven't made them available to the general public, but we do have recordings of it.
Okay. Okay. And what's the name of that group?
Vision Zero Community Partnership.
Community Partnership. Okay. Thank you.
And it looks like Cami was hoping to jump in on that.
Oh yeah, Cami, if you
I'll just add, moving forward, a couple of the initiatives that we're expecting funding on will have robust community involvement, especially at the local planning level, that we will bring in members of, you know, the vulnerable road user groups, as well as other partners that haven't typically been at the table. So I think you'll see a lot more of that coming moving forward.
Thanks for that. And so, and what does that mean when we talk about inviting public to be part of those processes? Are they in decision-making spots? Are they in voting spots in the decisions? How would they be guiding?
Great.
So that folks know that their time is valuable and it's actually going to be part of the process versus kind of sidelined as a subcommittee or a task force.
Sure, great question. As I think Paul mentioned it, we're expecting to receive some additional funding to do a Vision Zero Safe Routes Action Plan with an expanded group of vulnerable road users with youth. And in that process, we will rank, prioritize which schools to sort of address with safety first. And from the get-go all the way through, I think, to, you know, once we're actually constructing potential improvement projects, students, parents, school decision makers, school districts, all those folks will be involved in the identification of what are the issues, and identification of what are possible solutions, and all of the conversations as built into the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Ashley's on the screen. Just for situational awareness here, we're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. And so, and I have a few questions I'd like to ask as well. So,
and I have one more question.
Oh, okay.
And I'll be really quick. This one's for Christian. So the question, thanks for being here. You talked about auditing of classes that you're doing. And so it was just a curiosity if those are mandatory classes that is part of the prosecution, or could you just speak to what?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner. It was classes that we refer folks to. So sometimes it's a specific class depending on what brings somebody. So for example, there's the Alive at 25 class, which is a good program. And it's usually looking at younger individuals that we have coming through the system. So that may be one where we specifically say, do Alive at 25. There's other times where we may give an individual a list of 2 or 3 classes to choose from, but we wanted to make sure that in that list, it was all classes and education that is worthwhile and meaningful of their time and getting to our goal of more safe driving and minimizing distracted driving.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thanks, everybody. Ashley's got her hand up.
Yeah, Ashley, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the presentation, everyone. This topic is really personal, and I hope to convey to everyone how it should be personal to everyone, because you say Vision Zero and people may not realize that's talking about 0 fatalities, right? Like these are people in our community. And there was a really interesting video that was made by the Regional Council of Governments where people were surveyed of like, what should the goal be? What should the goal be? And they thought, well, you know, that'll never be 0. And then they asked people, what should the goal be for your family, for your family members? And then everyone changed their answer to 0. Like, obviously, I don't want traffic fatalities in my family. And so when you personalize it, I think it makes people realize like these are kiddos in our neighborhood or people in our community or our very own family members or even us. And so it's really important that we eliminate these traffic fatalities. And today it's totally possible. Also. So I'm really pleased to see the work staff is putting into this effort, and it will take an educational piece because the human component of this is very real. And there are lots of ways to be distracted when we drive, whether it's, you know, food or phones or other people in the car. And so we have to eliminate those types of distractions and really focus on the task at hand when you do have to drive or reduce those trips. One thing I always think about is Newton's second law when we talk about vision zero, and it's, you know, the F equals ma. Everybody remembers that from their physics class. And so when you think about the force hitting an object, it's the mass times the acceleration. And we have these massive vehicles, right, hitting small vehicles or people or bicycles. So when Alex talks about vulnerable users, I think about that second law. And just from a physics standpoint, what happens to a person when they are hit by a massive object, the only way to keep them alive is to reduce that acceleration component. So speed really kills. If you look at the maps where we have high speed network, it corresponds with our high injury network. So even when people are just going 10 miles over, if you think about the impact on a human body, which is very morbid to say aloud, but it's very real, it has a dramatic impact. So in respect to the questions that Kathleen put on the screen for us, I'm really interested in this legislation that may be coming forward this year or may have already dropped around using photo enforcement of speed. In other countries, they've seen great success eliminating speeding by using photo radar because people are aware that they will be caught if they're speeding. It's important that we don't that we do a bunch of things from a equality perspective, that we're not capturing the data in a way that is unjust. And there are a lot of protections we would need to put in place to be able to use that kind of intelligence. But if we can eliminate speeding, we could really save lives because people drive the speed the road was designed for, not the speed that was posted. So if it's very easy in the straightaway, it's very easy to speed, right? You find yourself going, there's no one else coming. It's very easy to get going too fast. And a lot of these roads were designed to be able to drive at a much higher speed than we have posted. So we need something else. We could never hire our way out of this through law enforcement with folks going around patrolling. And so if we can use technology to help us reduce speed, it really will save lives. So I'm very interested in more information on the photo radar piece coming forward and how we could apply that in an equitable way and perhaps get that passed in our state. Thanks.
Those are all really great comments and thoughts, and I think important to get on the table. And you know, to Ashley's point about what should the number be if it's not zero, I, as the board member who attends DRCOG, when we adopt our DRCOG Vision Zero plan, and the number is not zero, and it makes me really queasy to vote for that. Because I am basically saying that we will tolerate some degree of death and serious injury on our roadway, and I'm not okay with that. So just a few questions I have. One is, so you know, these improvements that you're talking about, the striping through the intersections, you know, the things other than like crash barriers and stuff like that that are pretty obvious. Do we have evidence that they are actually effective here? You know, this all sounds really great, but what's the evidence that some of these improvements do reduce fatal and serious injuries?
So I don't know if it rises to the level of peer reviewed yet, but one example of a success that we've had in the county is on J Road. So up until about 2018 or so, we had a number of serious injury and fatal bike crashes on J between city limits and 63rd. And as a response to that, we implemented a number of engineering measures, including the buffer shoulders on J, striping the bike lane through intersections on the green paint, and that has really reduced our number of bicycle crashes involving turning motor vehicles on that corridor. And I think since then, we've only had maybe one minor injury bike crash since those improvements were put in about, I think, fall 2018. So that's been one really striking success on the county facility.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm really glad to know that it is successful. I actually like J Road pretty frequently, like out to 63rd, 75th, Spine Road in there, and I appreciate all that striping. I also wanted to ask about seatbelt enforcement and impaired driving. And you know, one of the concerns people raise in making seatbelts say a primary offense as opposed to a secondary offense is the risk of racial profiling. And so how does the Sheriff's Department take steps to make sure that we're not using these enforcement tools in a disparate way?
So for the majority of the time, the officers are looking at the vehicle person inside traffic violations. For quicker ticket or seatbelt violations, we have to have a primary offense to stop a vehicle. So it's going to be speeding, running a stop sign, careless driving, something of that nature. And then once we make the contact, we're looking to see. So the stop itself is based normally on the vehicle or the vehicle's actions, not the driver itself.
And I have one more question, and then I see Commissioner Stolzman has her hand up. You know, the last thing is a simple one. Maybe this is for Mark and the commissioners. We can discuss this, but the I don't remember who it was that talked about bicycle safety driving education. Somebody over on this side of the table, I think it was. I would love to talk about how we can make that a part of driver education throughout Colorado. So I don't know what that consists of, but it sounded like it had a lot of potential. So I'll just put that on the table. We don't have time for any follow-up on that. Ashley,
I just wanted to acknowledge Laura's comments in the question and answer, and thank Jana for answering them. So if folks have specific intersections they want to tell staff about, there is a link to the Vision Zero website that Jana Peterson's put in the chat for people to give us specific intersections. And Laura, thank you. A lot of folks have told us about that intersection on 119, and I know our staff are working really hard on that. But more suggestions, the merrier. And if there's more input on that, it's really helpful. So thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks for doing that on the screen where Laura could hear it. And we could all hear it because that was important. This was our first effort. I think we'll all grade ourselves afterwards and see how it went. We did see the comments that the sound was not good. And I know my voice doesn't project very well. So we'll see what we can do to improve that. I have found this really helpful, interesting. I hope everybody else did too. And I'm excited to do more of these. I hope the public gets in the habit of joining us. So I think it's 9:54. I'm going to go ahead and close this out and thank everybody for all your work preparing. I know Natalie worked super hard to get the room set up and make sure everything worked, and I think it did. So thanks. I think we'll go ahead and end the meeting.